I'm Dylan at Western Bikeworks. Visit us at westernbikeworks.com. We're at our store at Northwest 17th and Lovejoy in downtown Portland. Today we're going to help you determine what size tube you need for your bicycle. A couple things you need to figure out is the valve type. The valve is dependent upon the size of the hole that's drilled in your rim. There are two common valves used here in the United States. The first is the Schrader valve. Probably most familiar with this from automotive applications. Exactly same valve that you would have on your car tires. It has a hole in the rim that's drilled to match that diameter. The second valve type, becoming a lot more common, is what's called the presta valve, sometimes called the French valve or the Regina valve. This is smaller in diameter, but it also has this little threaded valve core that you need to thread up in order to inflate and deflate the tube. Common misconception is that the presta valve holds pressures better because we see them on road tires that have higher pressures. Not the case. They both hold air just as well. The reason for the smaller valve is because it required a smaller hole drilled in the rim, and early road racing rims, very lightweight, skinnier, so you wanted to drill as small a hole as possible to maintain the structural integrity of that rim. If you have a presta valve, now you have to figure out what length of valve you need. And the reason for all these different lengths of valves is because it's very common nowadays to have deep profile rims. And in order to have sufficient valve protruding past the rim to get a pump head on there, you need to have different lengths of valve. So if you put this first one through, you'll see there's not sufficient valve in order to get a pump on there. The second one, which happens to be a 48 millimeter valve, will work, as will the other ones. You can always go a little bit longer. It might be a little unsightly, it might rattle a little bit more, but at least you'll be able to get a pump if you're out in the middle of nowhere and you get a flat. If you have a tube but you don't know what length the valve is, easy way to figure that out is just to measure it. If you have a ruler that has metric measurements, you can measure that out. Each one of those tick marks should be millimeters. If you only have one that reads in inches, the conversion inches to millimeters is 25.4. So just take whatever inches you measure and multiply by 25.4 to get the valve length. And if you don't have a tube, just got a new set of wheels that are deep profile, a good rule of thumb is to measure the width of the rim and add about 15 millimeters, and that will allow you to get a pump head on that valve. So right here I'm measuring about 30. I would want to step up to the 48 millimeter valve. If you have very deep profile rims, one option is to use a valve extender, but that requires a presta valve that has a removable valve core. And the removable valve core is very easily identified by a set of wrench flats up here on the thinner threaded portion of the valve. So you would remove that valve core with a special little wrench and insert the valve extender. So we've determined the valve type, Schrader or presta. If it's presta, we've determined the valve length, and now we need to determine the size of the tire. So a couple things we need to know is the diameter of the tire. It's going to be printed somewhere on there. It might be in metric measurements or it might be in inches. A very common road bike size is the 700C. This is an old French designation that's used for road bike tires. You'll see that it'll say 700C but also 27 inch. 27 is a size used for road bikes in the United States during the 70s, twin road bikes. 27 and 700C are close enough that you can use the same tube. They're pretty much interchangeable. Now we need to determine what the width of the tire is. Since tubes are elastic, they can expand to fill slightly wider tires. So there's always a range printed on the box that tells you how skinny a tire this tube will work for and how fat of a tire it will work. For example, these road racing tubes, they say 18 to 23. If you have a 25 millimeter tire, we have tubes that are 23 to 25. If you have a 28 millimeter tire, etc. They go up to the larger sizes. So you don't have to find your exact width printed on the box, it just has to be within that range. Some special considerations if you're looking for additional flat protection, they do make thorn resistant tubes. These are just tubes that have a very thick butyl rubber wall to improve the flat resistance. For race applications or performance applications, you can get lightweight tubes. These just have very thin walls to the tubes to decrease rotational weight, make you climb, accelerate a little bit better. And for race situations, you can invest in latex tubes. These are very expensive, they are very light, but they also lose air a lot more readily. They are a little bit permeable, so they don't hold air as well as butyl rubber. You might have to inflate them every day, every other day to keep them up to pressure. Have any questions about tube sizing or anything else, give us a call or visit us at westernbikeworks.com.